In 2012, my Air Force Research Lab team and I deployed to Afghanistan. Just 1 week after we arrived, our base was attacked. "16 Taliban members dressed in stolen US Army uniforms infiltrated the fence. My team and I watched as the flight line erupted with explosions that rocked the ground. Taliban members targeted aircraft and fuel dumps with rocket-propelled grenades and machine gun fire. The attack and the ensuing firefight lasted hours. Most of the attackers were killed. Many were killed by helicopters that took off from the base and attacked right where they had taken off from, inside the fence line. After the attackers were killed or captured, the extent of the damage became evident. 9 aircraft, including all 6 Marine Harriers stationed there, were destroyed. 2 Marines were also dead. It was hailed as the worst loss of US air power in a single incident since the Vietnam War. This was our introduction to Afghanistan, and it got worse from here. Let me tell you the story of how we got there. The story starts with me as an AFRL civilian program manager and technical lead developing a technology to neutralize improvised explosive devices, or IEDs. These roadside bombs have killed more US soldiers than anything else in Iraq and Afghanistan. I spent 7 years leading a team to develop a technology using high-power microwaves to neutralize these devices. After successfully field testing that system, we were asked to deploy it to Afghanistan. I transitioned from AFRL civilian Dr. Jeff to Air Force Reservist Major Jeff to lead the deployment. Here I am in my battle rattle preparing for a combat mission. The AFRL team consisted of civilians, contractors, and military who built this system, and then some of them deployed with it to Afghanistan. The military operations team consisted of Captain Mike, Sergeant Gill, and myself. So let me tell you a little bit more about this technology. This one-of-a-kind prototype system is a complex high-power microwave system designed to neutralize IEDs. The high-power electromagnetics group at the Directed Energy Directorate first got the idea of using microwaves to neutralize IEDs back in 2004, when IEDs became a substantial threat to US forces in Iraq. After some initial proof of principle experiments, we designed a concept for a system to be deployed with ground forces. The microwave system is housed in a 20-foot armored container on the back of the truck. Inside are 2 gas turbines, think jet engines, a bunch of complex power electronics, and a high-power microwave transmitter. The antenna then directs those microwaves towards the target. A crew of 2 is needed to operate the system, a driver and a weapons system operator who work in conjunction to engage the IEDs. Developing the high-power transmitter was a particularly difficult technical challenge. We had to match the output of several microwave sources together by phase locking them. Our initial attempts to phase lock failed, and the team had to come up with a new idea. The team came up with a brand new idea, and it worked wonderfully. And we were actually able to patent that idea. After spending years in the lab and at the test range, the system was finally ready. The military operations team also spent months conducting combat training with Marine units. A C-5 aircraft arrived at Kirtland, and we loaded the system and all our stuff onto it. Ironically, as we waited to get onto the aircraft, we gathered in the facility that we had built the system in with our families. We said our goodbyes and then walked from that facility to the aircraft that took us all the way to Afghanistan. We arrived in Afghanistan at Camp Leatherneck, the main US base in southwest Afghanistan in Helmand Province. It was the main Marine base and was also shared with the British, who called their site of base Camp Bastion. Prince Harry, a UK Apache helicopter pilot, was also stationed there. Now, if Afghanistan is a rough place, Helmand is the worst of it. The Taliban have always had a strong presence there, and 70% of the opium that comes from Afghanistan comes from Helmand. In fact, most of the places that my team and I went while we were there have already fallen back into Taliban hands. After we arrived, we had to get the system and ourselves ready for conducting combat operations. The operations team had many tasks to complete for planning and preparing for missions, including partnering with units, conducting reconnaissance missions with those units, understanding the intelligence data on the area and the threats, and many other tasks. We started running missions with Marine logistics units, conducting combat logistics patrols to resupply forward operating bases. While these missions were successful, we quickly discovered there were more IEDs to be found elsewhere, and we went looking for a fight. We found the areas with the most IEDs and the units that were running there. Now, this is how most missions would go. We would join a convoy near the middle of the patrol. As we got to an area where we thought there were IEDs, we would head towards the front of the patrol and lead the unit through those danger areas. Mike or Gil would drive, and I would operate the system. On these missions, we were exposed to many of the dangers of the combat environment, including IED blasts, sniper fire, and small arms fire. I was personally within 100 meters of 5 IED blasts. Being out in front was a dangerous place to be, and we depended on max power to keep us safe. There were many days when things went well and we were successful. These were the good days. Nothing went wrong, nobody got hurt or killed, and we were able to accomplish the mission. Things didn't always go as planned, but we had to adapt and we were still able to get the job done. One such mission was our first mission with 2-7, a Marine infantry company. As we were headed towards the wire, I was spinning up the system to make sure it was ready to go for when we left. I was spinning up the turbine, and I lost all communication between my control computers in the cab and the system and back. I told the patrol commander that the system was broken, but I told him that I thought we could probably fix it at our first stop on that day, a small forward operating base. We left the wire, and we quickly got to that small base. As we pulled in, I noticed a bunch of Marines, all in their combat gear, standing next to their vehicles. They were waiting for this next mission. As we got out of the truck, they were all looking at us. They had heard of us before. We were those crazy Air Force guys that liked being out in front. Now, at this point, I had no idea what was wrong with max power. Nothing like this had ever broken on the system before. I ran into the command post and told the company commander that the system was broken and that we needed some time to fix it. He told me we had all the time that we needed. They weren't going to run this next mission without us. There were just too many IEDs. I ran back to the system and stripped off my body armor to get to work. We quickly discovered that there was no power going to this system, which was supplied through 2 very large fuses. I opened the cover of the fuse box, and there were 2 spare fuses duct taped to the inside of the cover. We replaced the fuses and spun the system back up. The whole repair had taken less than 30 minutes, and the Marines were standing there watching us the whole time. We conducted a hasty pre-mission briefing, and then we went out to hunt IEDs. We went on that day to investigate 7 possible IEDs, and the mission was a great success. We had to adapt to the change in plans, but we were able to do so because of the skill and experience of the Max Power team. Had anyone else been out there that day, they would have failed because they just wouldn't know that system like we did since we built it. There were also days when things didn't go as planned and people got hurt or killed. These were the bad days. One such bad day, we weren't even on a mission, but we were supposed to be. We were supposed to be escorting a Marine combat logistics patrol through an area where we had worked before. Unfortunately, we weren't on a mission that day. We were trying to upgrade the system software, and we were having procedural issues getting it done. As the convoy moved through the area where we were supposed to be leading them, one of their vehicles hit an IED. Chris was in the vehicle, along with several other Marines. Chris was injured in the blast, and he died a short time later. That night, we went out to the flight line to conduct a dignified transfer. 1,000 Marines loaded Chris's body in a flag-draped coffin into the back of a C-130 in absolute silence. A few days later, I went and talked to Chris's platoon commander. As I was standing there talking with him, I could tell by the look on his face exactly what he was thinking. I was thinking the same thing too. He was thinking, if you had been here, this never would have happened. He was probably right. That was a pretty bad day. After 19 combat missions in Afghanistan, it was time to come home. But coming home isn't necessarily as easy as it sounds. I had my last combat mission on a Thursday. The next Tuesday, I was getting off a plane to see my family. While I was absolutely thrilled to be back in the United States and back with my family, it was a hard transition, especially in such a short amount of time. To go from the combat environment where you are just trying to survive the next mission to being back in the safety and comfort of the United States was overwhelming. It was also difficult to interact with people that have no idea what that environment is like. Coworkers, other military members who have never experienced combat, even friends and family. Some wanted to ignore my deployment completely. Others wanted to know every detail, including things that I didn't want to talk about. Most seemed to just not care. There are two things that got me through my time in Afghanistan, and these two things still help me cope with those experiences today. My faith in God and the important people in my life, including my team. I went to Afghanistan with my faith as a central tenet in my life. My faith was definitely challenged by what I saw, what I did, and what I was responsible for in Afghanistan. I know without a doubt that I never would have been able to withstand the intense pressure of leading this deployment had it not been for my faith to guide me. My team and I built a special bond. We worked long, hard hours building max power. And then we built the bond of brothers in combat as we used it in Afghanistan. On each mission, I would trust them and they would trust me with their lives. If any of us messed up, we were probably going to die. That bond with them continues today. They, my family, and the important people in my life still support me. Without them, I probably would be lost in the pain of my past. We developed this technology to fight IEDs, and then we risked our lives to use it in combat. It was a tremendous sacrifice. Now, most of you have seen images like this before. U.S. forces coming home from a deployment. But these aren't just random people pictured here. Each one of these Marines and soldiers followed my team and I through the most IED intense places in Afghanistan, and each one of them made it home. That is why we risked so much. And that is why what we do for the DoD is so important. We're developing the technologies to keep these kids alive. We are developing the technologies that will allow our great nation to continue to win its battles in the future. Now, most of you will never personally witness the impact of the technologies that you develop played out on the battlefield. Don't ever forget, there are airmen, soldiers, Marines, and sailors depending on you to develop those technologies and deliver them to those soldiers. Thank you.
Well, this was a rather 2 full days, and one with a exceptionally broad, diverse tapestry of science, technology, innovation, just going through but somewhere in there's got to be the word humanity. I guess one must be careful where one puts the humanity. I wish to thank you very much for coming, for presenting, for listening, for interacting. As we said before, this was an experiment in presenting and engaging over the exceptionally broad set of missions of the Department of Defense. I've served in a couple of departments, and in walking through the doors of DoD, there's one thing that hit me early on, which is the unity of the mission that everyone feels in their particular role. When I went to the Department of Energy, it was a very different sense, although they have a national security mission too, but I remember thinking it was as broad as American society, but very broad. It's DoD that has this thing that's focused, and that we all in our own way work at our things that have purpose and application, but over a broad set of times and a broad set of places. From basic research, which is one former secretary called it preparing for the war after next, to not so basic, and that which is focus, as we heard in the last talk, what's going on now, and where lives are immediately at stake. It's a serious responsibility, and I hope you can all understand. Again, this was our first try at this. I'm sure we can do better, but personally I was rather impressed by the breadth and the, as I said, both the scientific end to the humanity end. So thank you all very much, and by all means stay in touch. Don't be shy about making suggestions for the next time, although for the team here that put it together, they could use a little bit of a rest. From me also, especially for me. But I wish to thank Tewana Lyons for going through a whole lot of ups and downs for this, and for the assistance of I'm going to be missing people, Jason Day for his support, for Camille Coley for, as usual, having the vision of seeing this while it was still a spark, and for all of them, just both the commitment and the toughness of seeing this. We've never done anything like this before. Usually we just go to meetings or make fun of meetings, but creating this something new, I think, is you have a sense, at least I have a sense of something new being born, but it's got a ways to grow. Anyway, I don't want to make 2 long days even longer for you, but I want to thank you all very much, and stay well.